Hey everybody, Brian Zane here with my review of NXT Takeover in Your House 2021. Like last year, this year's show had a lot of nostalgia weaved throughout, especially the return of Todd Pettengill showing up occasionally on this show. They brought back the In Your House house, and hey, here's a bit of nostalgia for you. They brought back crowds. There was a full crowd at the Capitol Wrestling Center on this night. They said it's the biggest attendance in the venue so far, and I believe them. There's fans all over the place. Looked really cool. In your opening matchup here, it's a winners-take-all six-man tag team match as Bronson, Reed, and MSK put the North American and tag titles respectively on the line against all three members of Legado del Fantasma. The match begins, and early on there's a brief subtle moment here that I really enjoyed where Raul Mendoza is like selling the fact that Bronson Reed is no-selling his clotheslines, and the facial expressions and the body language is really great stuff. Some great triple teaming and stuff from the good guys, like an assisted splash as well. Consecutive dives from everyone, face and heel, finally ending with Reed just crashing onto all of them. Wesley taking a lot of the heat in this match after the multiple dive spot. Hot tag to Reed, and he's a House of Fire. Hits a somewhat contrived looking double Samoan drop where the opponents had to do all the work to get onto his shoulders, especially the second guy. At one point, Escobar tags in, hits a ridiculous Michinoku driver. Now there's a spot that I see a lot in these takeover matches, or just big tag matches in general, NXT, where it's, oh, the pinfall, and the other guys fall into the pinfall and break it up. We've seen that in so many matches, but I liked how they did it with this one, where Wesley dives onto Wild and they both fall into the pin that way. Like, that's how you do a spot like that feels a bit different. At one point near the end, Escobar just grabs the North American title on the outside, mugs the camera for a bit, does a big yell, and just all of a sudden gets flattened by Reed, who crashes all the way through the barricade and everything. Very impressive looking. He gets tagged in, hits a big tsunami onto Mendoza for the win. Extra points for Wesley, selling the impact of that move. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. This is a very entertaining opening matchup here, and I love how they booked this because Bronson Reed, being the only big man in a match full of smaller dudes, I think that actually made for a lot of interesting moments where he got to do these things and like everyone played off him very well, and it all made a lot of sense. And there's some very entertaining moments in this thing, a lot of close calls that I enjoyed as well, and the moment again of Reed just flattening Escobar, like tying it all back into what happened a few weeks ago, going through the barricade, was a lot of fun to watch as well. We get a shot earlier today where Cool Kyle and The Way almost come to blows before security and William Regal break things up. Then we see Todd Pettengill breaking down the history of the Mercedes Martinez Xia Li feud with a VHS copy of the Mae Young Classic. He mistakes Mackenzie Mitchell for Stephanie Wyand, lol. Then it's time for that match with Mercedes versus Xia Li. Very impressed with, well, first of all, this is a battle of the quietest themes on NXT because Mercedes almost feels like it doesn't play in time, and then Xia's got a very quiet intro before she does her big sword play. That sword was massive. Why didn't she take that to the ring with her? It seems that throwing Mercedes into the ring is Xia's biggest weakness in this match. He tries it a couple of times here, and they don't all look great. Xia working over for a while, but Mercedes does come back. It's a big cliffhanger slam out of the corner. Boa making the save at one point, and then when Mercedes gets in his face about it, he just repeats Tian Sha over and over. Because the one line he has is just him saying Tian Sha, like that means anything, basically. In the end, Xia escapes the air raid crash. Big spinning kick and a bit of a delay before she pins Mercedes to win the match. But then afterward, Mercedes fights back, hits Boa and Xia with a chair repeatedly, and the way they sell it makes you go, huh, these two like survived all these brutal kendo stick shots in their dungeon on their training to become these invincible warriors, and now they're being bested by chairs. Finally, Mei Ying on the throne stands no more. She stands up, in fact, and confronts Mercedes after a big long walk to meet up in the ramp. She hits the Tongan death grip on Mercedes and throws her into the barricade, which I thought was pretty cool. So then Tian Sha standing tall. I give the match itself 1.5 stars. This match did not feel great for me. I just feel there's a lot of clunkiness at times in this thing. It got a little bit better at the end, but there was just some moments here that kind of took me out of it. The post-match angle with Mei Ying getting up and attacking Mercedes was cool. It's the most physical we've seen her at so far in this run. And again, a little wrinkle added to the story. So again, the match itself, that's not the part that people are going to remember as much. It's the storyline afterwards, so I guess I gotta give them credit for that. But yeah, the match itself for me, it was not the best thing. We get a backstage promo from Ciampa and Thatcher, and they're very angry at GYV. And then it's time for the ladder match for the $1 Million Championship as Cameron Grimes takes on LA Knight. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, is watching at ringside for this one. And I have to say, I gotta give him credit for how they've incorporated DiBiase into this thing, because historically, when WWE brings a legend into a storyline, it almost never goes well, or they find some way for the legend to get over on like the younger talent. And one thing that I've complimented, say, AEW for example, is how they've been able to take legends and kind of use them in kind of a mentorship capacity, or kind of in a role basically that kind of helps elevate the younger talent. And I think what they've done with DiBiase in this angle is actually done really well with that. And slowly but surely, this angle has become it became my favorite thing to look forward to about this show. So I got to give him credit for that, and I think DiBiase played his role very well in this angle. They also do a pretty good job slowly building up the usage of the ladders in this matchup here. There's no like Hardy Boys level stuff in this thing. There's no Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn level things. The wheel is not being reinvented here, but I like how the ladders are integrated and the way they use them. It all kind of makes sense. Like at one point they have a ladder fight in the early going. At one point LA swings a ladder into Cameron's face, and like the ladders become kind of LA's undoing. There's a point where like Cameron uses a ladder on him or throws LA into a ladder, 3 big moves in a row as part of his big comeback. There's also a great point here on the outside where Cameron like climbs up a ladder and he jumps onto that steel setting around the ring and dives off of that onto Knight. My favorite part of this match is when Cameron goes for the golden ladder on the stage, and Wade Barrett's like, he's been saying all match, oh, that ladder's got to be so heavy, and like immediately Cameron just grabs it and just drags it along like it's nothing. Oh, it must be gold plated then. I thought that was hilarious. The match ends when they're both fighting on top of the ladder, and Cameron takes a huge trust fall, essentially trust fall bump off the top onto a ladder bridge on the outside of the ring. LA grabs the glass briefcase with the belt inside. He is the new $1 million champion. I give it 4 stars out of 5. It was a very strong ladder match here. Again, it wasn't particularly innovative, didn't reinvent the wheel, nothing too crazy in this match except for that final bump by Cameron Grimes, because that's a pretty insane one to take from that height onto the ladder like that. But everything made sense. I think they incorporated the ladders fairly well for what their styles were. Nothing felt too contrived. There wasn't some ridiculous like ladder erector set in the ring or something like that. It all made sense. It all flowed very well, so I got to give him that. As far as LA becoming the champion, you know, my heart said Cameron Grimes should have won, but deep down I think my brain was telling me LA is probably the more logical choice as $1 million champion. It'll be interesting to see what he does with that belt, if anything, because I mean, historically the $1 million championship has not been a fast track to success every time. But also I think that NXT doesn't need another championship, but again, we will see how this all plays out. Todd Pettengill plugged in some NXT merch when Hit Row show up and they have their own merch to sell. Backstage fracas time. Pete Dunne and Karrion Kross coming to blows as they get broken up. Poor Willie Reed just wants to run a wrestling show. It makes you wonder, as the last couple of weeks have gone on, and it's a thread we will see in this show, at the time I'm thinking, oh, this has got to be turning into an angle, right? Showing Regal constantly in these positions where he's got to try and maintain control. And they even kind of planted a seed for it last week in the 5-way face-off to close out the show, where Karrion says, this place is crazy now, you've lost all control and everything. They're really hammering this home where it feels like an angle's brewing from here. Up next, Raquel Gonzalez defends the NXT Women's title against Ember Moon, who hopes to become a 2-time champion on this night. Raquel starting out with all the big strength spots. She catches Ember in midair, code breaker, and slams her down. She throws her up and catches her into a sidewalk slam, which is very impressive. Raquel gets put into submission, but Dakota Kai, who is a recurring thing you see on the outside here, she helps her get the rope break. And then finally, Ember hits an eclipse, but very subtly and very slyly does Dakota get Raquel's foot on the ropes. Finally, Shotzi Blackheart shows up to even the odds, chases Dakota out of the ringside area. There's a big DDT on the ramp by Ember, but she cannot put Raquel away. She goes for another eclipse, but Raquel blocks it, hits the big powerbomb to win and retain. I give this one 3.5 stars out of 5. Very strong performance from these two here. I like the story they told, and Dakota Kai getting involved and Shotzi saving the day helped add to it. I think they didn't take it away from it, in my opinion. And even though I felt this match was a foregone conclusion from the word go, I've always said you got to make the journey to get there interesting, and they certainly did that, in my opinion. Ember made Raquel look really good in this matchup, and dare I say it's Raquel's finest hour in the ring since winning the championship. Pettengill's backstage playing Karate Fighters with Dexter Lumis. Love that throwback there. He asked Dexter how the women in his life are treating him, and of course Dexter takes offense to that. And then we get a plug for the Great American Bash returning July 6th. And then we see one more final backstage fracas between Ember and Shotzi and Raquel and Dakota, and poor Willie Reed's caught in the middle of it, and Wade Barrett very clearly making it very obvious now it's an angle where he says William Regal has lost all control. Main event time, NXT Championship Fatal 5-Way match as Karrion Kross defense against Johnny Gargano, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Pete Dunne, who's rocking a crisp white singlet here. Though not to be outdone, Gargano's got a great Shawn Michaels-inspired ring attire as well. In fact, the whole group, The Way, has a great Click cosplay for their gear tonight. It's everyone's involved, even the dog, who's dressed like Hunter Hearst Helmsley. You love to see it. So the big story in this matchup here is just that Karrion Kross is way too big and way too strong, so everybody else works at different points in tandem, just beat the hell out of him and knock him out for several minutes. At one point, they throw him through the in-your-house door. There's a moment where Cole and O'Reilly have a brief reconciliation and a brief reuniting when they double powerbomb him onto the announce table on the outside. But then everyone else gets a big run. Everyone gets time to shine here. No one feels left out in this five-way match. And like, there's moments here where it feels like, you know, when you're playing one of the video games and you're just on a roll and you're able, if you're in a handicap match or a multi-man, and you're able to hit, like, change opponent at just the right time and hit a big move on them, boom, boom, boom. Like, everyone got that moment. It felt kind of really cool to watch. But after a while, Kross just keeps getting up and then asserts his will, just dominates people constantly until he's taken out again and is down to the other four guys. Just great work from all involved. And the combinations you see in this match are all really well done. At one point, speaking of Dunne, Pete Dunne hits the bitter end on Kross, who kicks out. There's a great moment where Dunne fights out of the Kross jacket with the finger manipulation and everything. Kross and Gargano fight. Cole breaks it up. Kyle's got a double leg lock on Adam Cole here. Looks to have the match won, but Kross sits up and puts Cool Kyle in the Kross jacket. Kyle passes out, and Kross wins the match to retain. Holy hell, what a match this was. I mean, I'm torn between 4.5 and 5. I'm going to give it 4.5 because I've seen some amazing matches here, and this is a great match, maybe not 5 stars. If I did quarter stars, I'd give it 4 3/4. But it's just so well done. You know, the Takeover match, that whole style of, you know, Gargano and Cole and what those guys kind of popularized, it's very much present in this one. Lots of crazy near falls, lots of crazy spots, and there's lots of like tense moments here and there. But it's so well done, and Kross being inserted into this, I will say this. I went into this thing, and if you watch my NXT reviews, you know how little of a shit I gave about this match going into it. I could not have cared less. It was just on paper, I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a good match, but I don't care about the storyline. Here's the thing, I still don't care about the storyline going into it, but the match, as I predicted, was amazing. This was really great, and definitely Kross's finest hour. Probably his best performance to date on NXT. I think that him being put in that, it's very similar dynamic to like Bronson Reed and everyone else in that opening 6-man tag. He's the biggest dude amongst all these smaller guys, and the way they built that, where he was the threat, and they just tried again and again and again to take him out, and it just didn't work. And in the end, he was resourceful enough to win. I think that was really cool and very well done. So I think easily the best match of the night. A takeover match in every sense of the word, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. Go check this match out. But then a huge cliffhanger to end the show. As it comes to a close, we go backstage where William Regal leaves his office and goes out the building, and with a tear in his eye, he says he's never seen so much bedlam in his 7 years as GM of NXT, and says it's time for a change, and walks off. What could this mean? My grade for NXT Takeover In Your House 2021 is an A-. I think this is overall a very strong takeover. There was one match I couldn't get into, the Mercedes Martinez Xia Li match, but at least the post-match angle was very interesting. The 3 real matches you got to see in this show, in my opinion, are the 6-man tag, the ladder match, and of course the Fatal 5-Way, which I think really helps put this show over the edge in my opinion. I liked the thread of William Regal losing control, this cliffhanger at the end. It will be sad if he does leave his post as GM, but no authority figure is forever, as we've learned. And there was just enough of that in-your-house nostalgia to really put a smile on my face with Todd Pettengill and stuff. I mean, God, bring him back. I mean, he still has the chops, and you know, as much as I clown on Pettengill in the past in this channel, like, he still has got it, so why not bring him back and use him more in a capacity? That'd be pretty cool. So yeah, besides the one little knock on this show, I think this was a very strong takeover. It leaves you wanting more, it leaves you wanting to know what's going to happen on Tuesday with Regal and whatnot. So yeah, besides that one match, no real huge complaints about this show. But what did you think of Takeover, folks? Let me know in the comments section below. One final note to wrap this thing up, though. Today, June 13th, is actually the 8th birthday of Wrestling with Regret. It was 8 years ago today. May, I posted my Muhammad Hassan video in all its terribly produced glory, in all honesty. And you know, one thing led to another, and now in 2021, nothing is the same. It's crazy to think that how much this channel has changed and evolved and grown in those 8 years, and what it's done for me personally and for my career and the relationships I have fostered that have come from this channel. But the most important thing about this channel, folks, is you, the viewers, because without all you watching this channel would not have become as long lasting as it has. There was a point where I was actually probably about 2 years in where I was going to stop after a while, because okay, I've done all I wanted to do, like this has been a fun hobby and everything. And then when the fans started rolling in, like, oh, I can never stop now. This is just my life. And so that's where we are today. And so without your support, this wouldn't be where we are. This whole thing would not be existing. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for 8 years of support, and you know, still going strong here. I'm not going to say we're just getting started, because I can't imagine going another 8 years doing this thing. Time will tell. But this has been amazing. It's crazy to look back and just think about where I've come from and where we are now. And y'all are just a huge part of that. You are an integral part of that growth and that evolution and the longevity of this channel. So can't thank you enough. Thank you for all your support. And before I repeat myself too much more, I'm going to say I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time. Hello.